the Nintendo Wii. This console's impacted and left memories on people of all ages. Whether you were a 68-year-old grandma throwing Wii remotes at the TV, or a 7-year-old child making the most horrendous Miis of all time, if you were alive in the late 2000s, there is a high chance you had at least one experience with this system. But what made it so special? What made it so that even someone who had never played a video game in their life and never planned to was so obsessed with the system? In this video, I intend to answer all that and more. So if you enjoy these type of videos, sit back, relax, and let's talk about what made the Wii special. Before we talk about the Wii itself and the games and design choices that made it so special, first we have to get a little background on where Nintendo was coming from with the system and how they fleshed it out into one of their greatest systems of all time. After Nintendo's current console at the time, the GameCube was heavily underperforming for a number of reasons, one of the biggest being the new competitors on the scene, Sony with the PS2 and Microsoft with the original Xbox. It became clear to Nintendo that they needed to set themselves apart from the competition and create a unique gaming experience that only Nintendo could offer. And with this in mind, creator of Mario and many other iconic gaming franchises, Shigeru Miyamoto, started work on Nintendo's next home console under the very appropriate codename of Revolution. One of the main things Nintendo wanted to do with the Revolution was appeal to a whole new demographic of people, as they thought gaming had become a far too exclusive hobby. They also wanted to make it so the console would be capable of playing games from all past Nintendo consoles, as to reduce the clutter of gaming consoles in households, but also attract consumers who enjoyed playing retro games. With the idea of what they wanted this console to be in mind, they started brainstorming how they could make the system unique and how they could actually appeal to all audiences. That's when President of Nintendo Japan at the time, Satoru Iwata, proposed using motion sensing technology to simplify the gaming interface. This essentially meant that instead of using a standard controller to navigate the menus of the system, they wanted to somehow simplify it to just a hand or arm motion that everyone would understand and be familiar with. And that's where the idea of the Wiimote came in. Instead of using a control stick or D-pad that would be incredibly foreign and hard to understand to people who had never used a game console before, Nintendo instead designed the Wii's main controller to look and act like a TV remote. Something almost everyone was familiar with, and certainly something everyone who owned a TV to actually play the console would be familiar with. This made it so all anyone had to do to navigate the menu was point and click where they wanted to go, and they would be taken there. But one thing Nintendo had to figure out was how they would detect the motion and detect where the Wii remote was being pointed. This is where the sensor bar came in. This absolutely iconic piece of tech that sat on almost every TV in the world in the late 2000s would serve as the main way the Wii remote interacted with the TV. But let me tell you a secret. The sensor bar itself isn't actually a sensor. The actual sensor is in the Wii remote. All the bar does is emit a certain light that gets detected by the remote, and that tracks where the cursor on the screen goes. That's why if you really needed to, you could use two candles to act as the bar, and it works just fine. Just maybe a little more dangerous. The Wii remote, however, would not exclusively be used for just the menus. The motion sensing technology present inside the controller was intended to do far more, and the games that would release on the system throughout its lifespan would demonstrate this. But Nintendo needed the perfect way to introduce this new playstyle, as it wasn't just foreign to new audiences, it was something even seasoned gamers had never seen before. This is where Wii Sports came in. Although not originally intended to be a game that came bundled with the system, President of Nintendo America at the time, Reggie Fils-Aimé, continuously demanded it be, as he believed the simple gameplay and iconic sports to be the perfect way to teach people how to get the most out of the controller. And eventually he convinced Satoru Iwata to do so very close to the console's release, much to the dismay of Miyamoto, who believed it to be a terrible idea. But despite all of that, on November 19, 2006, the Nintendo Wii would officially launch.
It's another late night for gamers as they wait to try out the latest game system. The Nintendo Wii goes on sale at midnight, just days after the PlayStation 3 hit store shelves. Como 4's Joe Furia is live in Redmond, where people started lining up hours ago. Joe?
And Denise, that line here at Game Crazy in Redmond is starting to get pretty long. In just a few hours, the line went from a handful of people to well over 100.
The launch of the Wii was an absolute success, selling almost 6 million units during its first 4 months, showing Nintendo just how much people love this new take on gaming. Especially at the price it was for the system, being half of the price of the newly released PS3 at the time. Upon turning on the Wii for the first time after setting everything up, you are greeted with this. To this day, the Wii has my absolute favorite home menu ever. The calm ambient music, the little sound it makes when you hover over something with the cursor and click on it, how every channel has its own jingle that plays, it's just so special and adds so much character to it. The menu perfectly sticks with the whole TV vibe that the system goes for as well. I mean, we already had the controller that looks and acts like a TV remote, so why not design the whole menu with that style in mind? And by TV style, I mean how everything on the Wii's menu is called a channel. The disc channel, the weather channel, the photo channel. Selecting an application on the Wii is just like selecting the channel you'd want to watch on an actual TV. This not only made the Wii incredibly unique, it also made it so the casual audience that the Wii attracted would be familiar with it and wouldn't have to scour through the manual to find out how everything worked. One of the first channels you would probably notice besides the disc channel is the Me channel. It's right next to the disc channel, so it must be important. Ah, the Me Maker, a channel I probably spent far too long in making the most abysmal creations of all time. The Me Maker allowed you to create your own version of yourself to use in a bunch of different ways on the Wii. Nearly every huge game released on the system made use of them in some way, with some games solely using them as the main characters. The Me Maker itself had limited options, but to me, that's what made it so special. You had to be creative and work with what you had to make something that at least vaguely resembles what you look like. I remember how much fun I would have when I was younger just making Miis of friends and family members, showing them, and just seeing the absolute disappointment on their faces when they had to use it in game. Another cool thing about the Miis was that you were actually able to post and download Miis off the internet using a downloadable channel called the Check Me Out channel, which was released about a year after the Wii launched. Being able to download this channel and post your Miis on the internet took advantage of Nintendo's new service at the time, Nintendo Wi-Fi Connection, or better known today as Nintendo WFC. Nintendo Wi-Fi Connection was the company's first actual attempt at making use of the internet, which was relatively a new thing at the time. Having things be downloadable via the internet was huge for Nintendo and allowed for them to, throughout the Wii's lifespan, sell digital content that would be stored on the actual system, something that around this time started to become pretty common. The way Nintendo would distribute this digital content, however, would be anything but common. The Wii Shop channel. Probably the most iconic channel on the entire system was the place for shopping. The Wii Shop channel fulfilled one of the main goals Nintendo had with the system. The ability to play games from all of Nintendo's past home consoles without having to actually physically own those consoles and games. They had the GameCube already covered with the Wii being backwards compatible with the system, meaning GameCube discs could be put in the disc slot and be played, along with a controller port for GameCube controllers and a GameCube memory slot on the very top of the system. For NES, SNES, and N64 games, however, Nintendo would offer them as a digital purchase through a service called the Virtual Console. With Virtual Console, you could outright buy these games using the Wii Shop channel's currency Wii points and download them directly on your system to play at any time. At release, Virtual Console had quite a small selection of games from the NES, SNES, Sega Genesis, and N64, but eventually the Wii Shop channel would start to update weekly, adding new titles and even sometimes entirely new retro consoles like the Neo Geo and Commodore 64, which in turn made the Wii the perfect console to get if you enjoy retro gaming and broadened the audience the Wii could appeal to even more. Other channels on the Wii like the Weather channel and the News channel, along with everything I just mentioned, made the Wii so much more than just a game console. It had so much you could do on it besides gaming, and in a time where pretty much the only thing you could do on a cell phone was call and text people, the Wii was incredibly useful for checking just about anything you needed to know. For example, you need to know the weather? Check the Weather channel. Want to see the latest news and read the latest articles? Use the News channel. The Wii's lifespan was in the perfect time where the internet was becoming more and more commonly used. However, cell phones hadn't fully adopted its use yet, so taking advantage of this, Nintendo made the Wii a hub for just about anything you wanted to do using the internet, and eventually straight up added a browser via the internet channel in 2009, which allowed people to browse the internet directly from their Wii. Every single one of these channels mentioned had their own distinct music that even further demonstrated just how much care and thought was put into the system. From the goofy music it makes when you're adding or changing things about your Mii, to the little animation of Mario breaking bricks and collecting coins that plays while your software downloads from the shop channel, just had this charm that only the Wii had. Everything about this system was just so simple and fun, while at the same time being incredibly revolutionary for the time. These small details stick with us because it reminds us of a simpler time in our lives, where the only thing that mattered was trying to convince your mom to add enough Wii points so that you could buy Super Mario Bros. 3. But I mean, there was so much more to the Wii than this. What about all the games that came out on the system? Wii Sports, Mario Galaxy, Sonic Colors, Mario Kart Wii, Wii Sports Resort, New Super Mario Bros. Wii, Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Returns, and so many more absolutely iconic games released on this system to make up one of the best libraries that a Nintendo console, hell, any console has ever had. A lot of the best games on the system perfectly made use of the motion controls on the Wii, while also offering a gaming experience that both old and new Nintendo fans could enjoy. Take for example a game like Mario Kart Wii. On its own, it's one of the best games in the Mario Kart series because of its easy to learn, difficult to master gameplay style, great selection of tracks, and great controls. But then factoring in the creative use of motion controls the game uses by allowing the player to physically steer the cart by using the Wii remote on its side, and maybe even putting the controller in the Wii wheel that comes with the game, creates an immersive experience that casual gamers would love, while also offering the option for players who dislike the motion controls to attach the nunchuck to the Wiimote and use that for steering. Or for people who prefer an even more classic controller approach, you could use the GameCube controller or a Wii Classic controller if you had one. By adding these extra control options on games that weren't solely based around motion controls, Nintendo was pleasing their audience of gamers who were around before the Wii and were looking for an experience they were used to as to not lose that demographic of players, because again, the whole idea of the Wii was to appeal to everyone and be as inclusive as possible. This was great because not only was Nintendo offering a wide variety of brand new games, they're also offering so many different ways to play those games and really showed just how much they cared. One game on the Wii that almost literally anyone who's ever even touched the console before has played is Wii Sports. This game came packaged with the system everywhere but Japan, and is one of the most influential titles in the Wii's library, bringing life to a number of sequels, copies, and pioneered how motion control games in the late 2000s and early 2010s were made. I made an entire video on this game, which should show up in the iCard now if you care at all to learn more about this game, but here I'll just give a brief rundown on the game. Wii Sports at face value is very simple. It's a collection of 5 sports that you can play alone or with friends, with controls that just about anyone can learn despite their age, that still hold up really well to this day. However, the more you play the game, the more you learn about hidden techniques and strategies you can use to get even better at the game. One of the best examples of this is the way you can curve the ball to your liking in bowling by turning the remote right after throwing the ball in the direction you want to curve it in, and how fast or slow you turn the remote determines how much or how little the ball will curve. By doing this, Nintendo is again appealing to many different people. You have the casual audience who just enjoys how simple and easy the sports are to play, and don't really care what their score is and just get their fun out of the novelty of it. But then there's the more hardcore audience who wants to get the highest score possible and be the best at the game without it being too easy for them. This is just another thing that makes the Wii really special. Its ability to appeal to such a wide variety of people while also creating genuinely memorable games and experiences. Another big thing the Wii was known for was its multiplayer, and probably one of the best examples of this is with New Super Mario Bros. Wii. It was the first 2D Mario game ever to offer actual multiplayer couch co-op, and oh man was this an experience. Getting 4 people together to play this game will never end well. You'll have everyone throwing each other, that one guy speedrunning to the end of the level, and the other guy that just keeps going into their bubble. It's absolute chaos, but a ton of fun. The level design is crafted specifically around both single player and multiplayer, so it won't feel too cramped in multiplayer and never too empty in single player. Adding multiplayer to the first 2D Mario game on a home console since the SNES was absolutely genius. The original 2D Mario games on the NES and SNES are so iconic that even the new audience who were just getting into video games with the Wii would likely partially understand how to play the game, and with the inclusion of multiplayer, it was so easy to teach them regardless of that. But even with all the incredible multiplayer experiences the Wii offered, you also had these masterfully crafted solely single-player experiences like Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 and The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, just to name some of the best. Super Mario Galaxy took what we knew about 3D Mario and just threw it out the window. Mario is in space now, and the new gravity mechanic opened the doors to so many new level design possibilities. Along with that, we saw our first genuine story in a mainline Mario game, and it was so incredibly well thought out and made the adventure so much more memorable, especially with the beautiful orchestral soundtrack that plays throughout your journey, pushing you forward. The atmosphere this game is able to create in some of its levels reaches highs that we still haven't seen beaten in a Mario game almost a decade and a half later. The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess is one of the best Zelda games ever made, only being beaten out by Breath of the Wild, which many consider to be the best game ever made, period. Twilight Princess feels like everything Ocarina of Time wanted to be, but couldn't be due to hardware limitations and time constraints. And that's not to say Ocarina of Time is bad in any way, that's incredibly far from the truth. But Twilight Princess just feels like that game on a much bigger scale, and I absolutely love it. While the graphics are incredibly dated and don't age as well as, say, Mario Galaxy, the world and story in this title is unlike anything I've seen in a game in a long time. It's the only Zelda game with a T for teen rating, which is something incredibly unheard of from a main Nintendo IP because of its very dark tones and story that really sets it apart from other games on the Wii. But focusing again on multiplayer games, the Wii was the first Nintendo console to have actually fully functional online play. For the first time, you could play some of your favorite multiplayer games like Mario Kart or Smash Bros. Online against people from around the world. I have such fond memories of loading into a Mario Kart Wii Online lobby and seeing where everyone was on that giant globe and the music you heard right before the race started while you waited for that one guy with the shitty ass Wi-Fi to load into the game. The early days of online play in the Wii era was just such a magical time because it was like nothing Nintendo fans had ever seen before and added so much replayability to these games with the basically infinite amount of new opponents you'd be up against now. Although most big games on the Wii were very unique and very different from each other, they all had this same feel. They all felt like a Wii game, and that's not a bad thing. It made them that much more special. They had this identity that only a Wii game could, and really set them apart from games on, say, the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. The games on a system are what you're going to definitely put the most time into, and are the things that are going to leave the biggest impression on you and affect your overall thoughts on the console. The Wii fortunately had an incredible library of games, and it's just another thing that makes it as special as it is. The Wii wasn't just a game console, it was so much more than that. It was a photo editor, it was a character creator, it was a home for retro games, it was a weather app, it was a place to check the news. It was special. There was so much you could do on this system, and it all presented it in the most charming way possible. It had an identity, and in a time now where console menus are becoming more and more bland and modern, looking back at the Wii, you get a glimpse into a time where everyone was experimenting, trying new things, and just being unique. Now that's not to say consoles in the modern era are bad, they absolutely aren't, but sometimes it's nice to just go back and really see what it was like back then, and why consoles like the Wii stick with us so much even 16 years after its release. I hope after hearing everything I've had to say throughout this video, you've at least gotten a little insight on why this console is so well remembered and cherished by so many. If you grew up with a Wii or just had an experience with it at all in any time of your life, let me know what your favorite memory was with the console in the comments. I read every single one and I would love to hear from you. With that, I sincerely hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like and maybe subscribe if you feel like it. I really appreciate it. And as always, thanks for watching till the very end and have a great day.